At 76, I thought lawyers only brought bad news. But when Mr. Peterson sat in my living room with a briefcase full of documents, he wasn't there to sue me. He was there to make me a millionaire. "Congratulations, Mr. Smith," he said, sliding the keys across my coffee table. "You've inherited the Whitmore estate. $2 million, plus the mansion." I stared at the keys like they were dynamite. "There's been a mistake. My name isn't Smith. It's Harold Jenkins. And I don't know anyone named Whitmore." The lawyer checked his papers twice. "The will is very specific. To Harold Smith, for saving my life in 1973 when we were both 17. That's when my blood went cold. Because in 1973, I was 17. And I did save someone's life. But his name wasn't Whitmore. It was Tommy Wilson. And I thought he died anyway." The lawyer left the keys and documents, promising to investigate. But I couldn't wait. That night, I drove to the address he'd given me. The Whitmore mansion sat on 5 acres outside town, surrounded by iron gates and manicured gardens. I used the key, half expecting alarms to go off. Instead, the gate opened smoothly, like it was waiting for me. The mansion was even grander than I'd imagined. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, paintings that probably cost more than my house. But what stopped me cold was the portrait hanging in the main hallway. It was Tommy Wilson. Older, distinguished, wearing an expensive suit. But definitely Tommy. The nameplate read, Thomas Whitmore III, 1956 to 2024. Tommy Wilson had become Thomas Whitmore III. But how? And why had he left everything to me? I climbed the grand staircase, looking for answers. In what must have been his study, I found a desk covered with newspapers. All from 1973. All reporting the same story. Local teen saves drowning boy. There was a photo of me, 17 years old, pulling someone from Miller's Lake. But in these newspapers, the boy I saved was identified as Thomas Whitmore III, visiting from boarding school. The memory came flooding back. Summer of 1973. I was working at the lake, cleaning boats for tourists. I heard screaming from the deep end. A kid was thrashing in the water, going under. His friends were panicking, couldn't swim well enough to help. I dove in without thinking. The kid was heavier than he looked, and the water was deeper than I expected. By the time I dragged him to shore, we were both half dead. He was unconscious, blue around the lips. I gave him mouth-to-mouth until he coughed up lake water. His friend said his name was Tommy Wilson. He was visiting from out of town, staying with relatives. When the paramedics arrived, they took him away. I never saw him again. Never knew if he fully recovered. But according to these newspapers, his name was Thomas Whitmore III. Someone had lied about his identity that day. But why? I kept searching the study. In a locked drawer, I found a letter addressed to me, written in Tommy's handwriting, dated just 3 months ago. But that wasn't all I found. Hidden behind the letter was a thick manila envelope. Inside were dozens of photographs spanning 50 years. Tommy as a teenager, graduating from college. Tommy in a wedding tuxedo. Tommy with his children. Tommy receiving business awards. And in every single photo, no matter how many years had passed, he wore the same thing around his neck. A small silver medallion. My medallion. The one I'd lost in the lake the day I saved him. Dear Harold, the letter began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've finally learned the truth. My real name is Thomas Whitmore III. In 1973, I was running away from boarding school. My father was abusive, controlling. He'd sent me away because I wouldn't conform to his expectations. That summer, I was hiding at my aunt's house in your town, using the name Tommy Wilson so my father couldn't find me. The letter continued. When you pulled me from that lake, you didn't just save my life. You saved my future. After the accident, my aunt convinced my father to let me come home to get proper medical attention. That brush with death changed everything. My father realized how close he'd come to losing me forever. He started treating me differently. We rebuilt our relationship. But there was more to the story than I remembered. As I read on, Tommy described details I'd forgotten. How he'd grabbed onto my medallion as I pulled him to shore. How the chain had broken in the struggle. How he'd managed to hold on to it, even as he lost consciousness. I kept that medallion, Harold. It became my lucky charm, my reminder of the day someone cared enough to risk their life for a stranger. I wore it every day for 51 years. It's in the envelope with this letter. I'm returning it to you now, along with everything else I owe you. I went back to Tommy's bedroom and found something that made my hands shake. On his nightstand was a journal, leather-bound and thick. The first entry was dated 3 days after the lake incident. July 15th, 1973. The doctors say I'm lucky to be alive. A boy named Harold Jenkins saved me. I don't even know his last name for sure. The newspapers just said Harold, but I'll never forget his face. He looked scared when he pulled me out, like he thought I was already dead. I want to find him someday and thank him properly. The entries continued sporadically over the years. December 1975. Started college today. Still wearing Harold's medallion. Wonder what he's doing now. June 1982. Got engaged to Margaret today. She asked about the medallion. Told her about the lake, about Harold. She thinks I should try to find him. March 1990. Hired my first private investigator to look for Harold Jenkins. No luck. It's like he vanished. Entry after entry, year after year. Tommy had never stopped thinking about me. Never stopped looking. August 1995. Our son James started swimming lessons today. Told him about Harold Jenkins, the man who saved his father's life. James wants to learn to save people too. November 2010. Margaret passed away last month. Cancer. In her final days, she made me promise to keep looking for Harold. She said I needed to thank him properly before it was too late. The entries became more desperate as the years passed. January 2015. 7th private investigator in 20 years. They keep hitting dead ends. Harold Jenkins seems to have disappeared completely after 1973. June 2018. DNA test came back. Hoping Harold might have taken one too, that we could connect that way. No matches. September 2020. Had a heart attack. Doctors say I might not have long. Still haven't found Harold. Feeling like I failed him somehow. Then, finally, the entry that changed everything. March 2023. New investigator found him. Harold Jenkins became Harold Smith in 1974. He's been living 2 towns over this entire time. Married, widowed, living alone now. I want to approach him, but I'm nervous. What if he doesn't remember? What if he doesn't want to see me? What if I'm just a bad memory he's tried to forget? The next entry was dated a week later. Drove by Harold's house today. Sat in my car for an hour, trying to work up the courage to knock on his door. He was in his garden, watering flowers. He looks kind, gentle, just like I remembered. But I couldn't do it. What would I say? Hi, I'm the kid you saved 50 years ago, and I've been stalking you ever since. But Tommy had been watching me. The journal revealed months of observations. April 2023. Harold volunteers at the senior center on Elm Street. Saw him helping an elderly woman with her physical therapy today. He's patient, kind. Still the same person who jumped in that lake. May 2023. Harold's neighbor told me his wife died 5 years ago. He seems lonely but keeps himself busy helping others. Mows lawns for the disabled veterans on his street. Brings groceries to the widow next door. June 2023. Harold's car broke down yesterday. Watched him walk 3 miles to the senior center because he didn't want to disappoint the people counting on him. This man hasn't changed at all. July 2023. Saw Harold give his jacket to a homeless man outside the grocery store. It was his only jacket. He walked home in the rain. Reading these entries, I realized Tommy had been studying my life like a detective, but also like a friend who cared deeply about someone he'd never properly met. August 2023. Doctor says I have 6 months, maybe less. Pancreatic cancer. I'm running out of time to do this right. Harold deserves more than a surprise visit from a dying man. He deserves security, comfort, recognition for the kind of person he's always been. The final entries revealed Tommy's plan. September 2023. Met with my lawyers today. Changing my will. Everything goes to Harold Smith, formerly Harold Jenkins. My family understands. They know the story. They agree Harold earned this. October 2023. Had the investigator dig deeper into Harold's past, found out about his father's arrest, about how his family lost everything right after the lake incident. My God, my family was responsible for that. My father turned in Harold's father for embezzlement. We destroyed his life while trying to honor him. November 2023. Can barely write anymore. Hands shake too much. But I need to finish this. Harold struggled his whole life because my family felt guilty about his heroism. We ruined his family trying to thank him. This inheritance isn't gratitude. It's restitution. It's justice 50 years too late. The final entry was barely legible. December 2023. Harold doesn't know about the inheritance yet. Won't know until after I'm gone. That's better. He won't feel obligated to visit a dying old man out of politeness. He'll just know that someone remembered, someone cared, someone wanted to make things right. I closed the journal and sat in Tommy's chair for a long time. All those years, I'd wondered what happened to the boy I'd pulled from the lake. I'd assumed he'd forgotten about me, moved on with his life. Instead, he'd spent 50 years trying to repay a debt I didn't even know existed. But there was one more surprise waiting. In Tommy's closet, I found a dozen shoe boxes. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to me, all unfinished or unsent. Dear Harold, I've been trying to write this letter for 20 years. Harold, you probably don't remember me, but Mr. Jenkins, I hope this finds you well. Letter after letter, draft after draft. Tommy had written to me thousands of times, but never found the right words. Some letters were short, just a simple thank you. Others were pages long, describing his life, his family, his success. All of them ended the same way. I owe you everything. In the last box, I found something that broke my heart. Children's drawings. Crayon pictures of a man pulling a boy from water. Stick figures with labels, Grandpa Tommy and Harold the Hero. Tommy had told his story to his grandchildren. They'd drawn pictures of a man they'd never met, but considered part of their family. The next morning, I called the lawyer. Mr. Peterson, I want to accept the inheritance. But first, I need to meet Tommy's family. The meeting was arranged for that afternoon at the mansion. Tommy's widow, Catherine, arrived with their 2 children and 4 grandchildren. I was nervous, unsure what to say. But Catherine smiled when she saw me. Harold, we've been waiting to meet you for so long. She handed me a photo. This was taken the day before Tom passed. He was holding your medallion, telling the grandchildren the story of how you saved him. The children, now adults themselves, shook my hands like I was meeting royalty. Dad talked about you our entire lives, Tommy's son James said. You were like a myth in our family, the hero who saved our father. But it was the grandchildren who really got to me. The youngest, a girl about 8, tugged on my sleeve. Are you really Harold the Hero? She asked. I knelt down to her level. I'm just Harold. Your grandfather was the hero. He spent his whole life trying to help people, trying to make the world better. Grandpa said you taught him how to be brave, she said. He said before you saved him, he was scared of everything. But after, he was never scared again. Catherine pulled me aside while the family explored the mansion. Harold, I need you to know something. Tom didn't just leave you money. He left you a mission. She handed me another letter, this one addressed to both of us. Tom wanted you to know about the Harold Jenkins Scholarship Fund he started in your name. Every year for the past 10 years, he's been giving full scholarships to kids who can't afford college. Kids who remind him of you. Hard workers, people who help others, people who've overcome adversity. I stared at the letter. He did this in my name? 23 kids have gone to college so far because of the Harold Jenkins Scholarship. Tom interviewed every single one personally. He told them all about you, about how one person's kindness can change everything. You've been inspiring young people for a decade and didn't even know it. The letter explained that the scholarship fund would continue with my inheritance. It's not about the money, Harold, Catherine said. It's about Tom's belief that kindness should be rewarded, that heroes should be recognized, that good people deserve good things. She smiled through her tears. He also wanted you to know that he named his first boat Harold's Hope. He said it was because you taught him that there's always someone willing to jump in when you're drowning. Over the following weeks, I learned more about Tommy's life and how it had been shaped by our brief encounter. He'd become a successful businessman, but he'd also been known for his philanthropy. He'd funded swimming programs for underprivileged kids. He'd donated to water safety organizations. He'd personally paid for swimming lessons for hundreds of children over the years. He used to say that every child who learned to swim was a potential lifesaver, James told me. He believed that teaching kids to be brave in the water would teach them to be brave in life. Tommy had also kept detailed records of every person he'd helped over the years. Foster kids, homeless veterans, struggling families. He always said he was just passing along what you gave him, Catherine explained. The knowledge that someone would risk everything for a stranger. I realized that my one act of courage in 1973 had rippled out through thousands of lives. Every person Tommy helped, every scholarship recipient, every child who learned to swim, they were all connected to that moment at Miller's Lake. But Tommy had done something else I hadn't expected. He'd been secretly helping my neighbors, my community, for years. Anonymous donations to the senior center where I volunteered, paying heating bills for elderly people in winter, buying groceries for families in need. He wanted to help you, Catherine explained, but he knew you were too proud to accept charity. So he helped the people you cared about instead. The mansion became more than just the headquarters for a foundation. It became a gathering place for all the lives Tommy had touched. Scholarship recipients came to share their stories. Families he'd helped came to say thank you. Children from his swimming programs came to play in the gardens. I realized that Tommy hadn't just left me a house. He'd left me a community. But the most powerful moment came when I met Marcus, a young man who'd received one of the Harold Jenkins scholarships 5 years earlier. He was now a paramedic, working for the same ambulance service that had responded to Tommy's near drowning in 1973. "Mr. Jenkins," he said, "I need you to know something. Last month, I pulled a kid from a river. He was unconscious, just like Mr. Whitmore was that day in 1973. While I was giving him CPR, I thought about the story Mr. Whitmore told me about you. About how you didn't hesitate, how you just acted. It gave me strength to keep trying when I thought the kid was gone. The boy Marcus saved had survived, had gone home to his family, would grow up, maybe have children of his own someday. That's 4 generations now," I realized out loud. Me, Tommy, you, and the boy you saved. All connected by one moment of choosing to act instead of standing by. On the first anniversary of Tommy's death, I organized something special. A memorial service in the mansion's garden, but also a celebration of life-saving. I invited everyone Tommy had helped, all the scholarship recipients, all the families he'd supported. But I also invited local lifeguards, paramedics, doctors, nurses, anyone whose job was saving lives. Tommy believed that heroism isn't about being fearless, I told the crowd. It's about being afraid and acting anyway. It's about seeing someone in trouble and deciding their life matters more than your comfort. But the biggest surprise came from Marcus. He'd organized a group of his fellow paramedics to create something called the Tommy Whitmore Life-Saving Society. We meet monthly to train citizens in CPR, water safety, first aid. We want to create more heroes like you and Mr. Whitmore. I looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the boy I'd pulled from a lake 50 years ago. Tommy's children and grandchildren were there, but so were kids he'd never met who'd learned to swim because of his programs. Families he'd helped anonymously were there, having discovered their mysterious benefactor's identity. College graduates who owed their education to the Harold Jenkins Scholarship were there, many of them now helping others in their own careers. That night, alone in Tommy's study, I opened his journal one final time. On the very last page, written in shaking handwriting just days before he died, was one final entry. I never got to tell Harold this in person, so I'm writing it here, hoping somehow he'll know. Harold, you didn't just save my life that day. You saved my soul. You showed me that strangers can be family, that kindness is stronger than fear, that love is stronger than death. You taught me that heroism isn't about being special, it's about being present when someone needs you. I spent 50 years trying to thank you properly, But I realize now that thanks aren't what matter. What matters is passing it forward. Every life I've helped, every scholarship I've given, every child I've taught to swim, that's my thank you to you. And now it's your turn to pass it forward again. The money isn't payment for something you did 50 years ago. It's investment in all the good you'll do in the years to come. I know you'll use it well, because heroes always do. Thank you for showing me what it means to be truly alive. Thank you for teaching me that love is an action, not just a feeling. Thank you for jumping in when everyone else just stood and watched. See you on the other side, my friend. You're grateful, Tommy. At 76, I learned that the boy I saved in 1973 had spent 50 years trying to save me back. But more than that, I learned that every act of kindness creates ripples we can't imagine. Tommy and I never spoke after that day at the lake, but we'd been having a conversation for half a century. A conversation about courage, about kindness, about the connections that bind us to strangers who become family. The inheritance wasn't really about money. It was about understanding that we're all connected, that every life we touch touches other lives in ways we'll never fully know. Tommy had spent 50 years proving that heroes aren't born. They're made, one choice at a time, one moment of courage building on another. And now it was my turn to prove it again.